I just had a laugh. I just had a laugh because the Sunderland Newcastle game at St James's Park in Newcastle, the Tyne-Wear Derby, it just ended, and surprisingly Newcastle lost that game. Newcastle were in such a commanding position from the get-go, and they had managed to keep Sunderland to a certain limit. And we all remember what happened in the reverse fixture at Sunderland. Newcastle were completely torn apart, just like they were last week by Barcelona. Not even last week, it was just this previous week, just a few days ago. 7-2 they lost to Barcelona after being 2-2 at halftime, if I remember correctly. Oh, they were 3-2 at halftime. But Newcastle lost this game against Sunderland. Newcastle lost this game against Sunderland. It is one of the most surprising things you could see. And yet, one of the most predictable things also in a way. Because the way Newcastle have played this season, the way their squad was built after all those controversies they were involved in, after all the ruckus that was left at Newcastle in the summer with the Isak transfer and Visa coming in and Voltemada coming in, and then Voltemada's form dropping over the course of the season, and then Newcastle having to play so many games that they just couldn't manage so many games being played. It's been a weird season at Newcastle. It's been a weird season where Newcastle have had to pay the price in the form of their position on the table, which is currently number 12, because Sunderland have overtaken them and risen up to number 11, just 1 point ahead of them at 43 points. Newcastle are at number 12 at the time of making this video at 42 points now. Obviously, the position will change depending on the games that are being played. Right now, today, the rest of this match day. But it is such a surprising thing that Newcastle have completely lost the plot over the course of the past week, especially after there's such an impressive performance at Stamford Bridge. They won over Chelsea 1-0 away, which was not an easy fixture. Even though Rosenior's Chelsea have been an atrocious team, have played such horrendous football, Newcastle were still impressive in that game. And to lose to Barcelona after you drew 1-1 to them at home, to lose to them 7-2, 8-3 on aggregate, and then lose 2-1 to Sunderland after a 90th minute winner from Brian Brobby. I don't know what to say about Newcastle. It's an interesting period. And we'll also take a look at Liam Rosenior's Chelsea, which, as I said, are horrendous at this moment. Also Liverpool, who lost Brighton yesterday 3-1 away at Brighton. Not the most impressive of showings from Liverpool once again, and we'll take a look at that again. So welcome back, everybody. Let's discuss. So let's talk about the Brighton-Liverpool game at first, because I know Liverpool were the exact clear favourites going into the Brighton game. I know some people might have favoured them, but Brighton are still somewhat of a competitive team, not as strong as they used to be in the past few years, in the Graham Potter era, the Roberto De Zerbi era, but Brighton are still somewhat of a respectable team. There weren't many expectations with Liverpool, but they didn't even deliver on whatever low expectations people had from them. Danny Welbeck opened the scoring with a decent goal, a very respectable goal. And Welbeck is a very respectable player. Welbeck is a very experienced player. Kudos to him for being in the Premier League for so long and being at the highest level for so long, giving his best for so long. But then Liverpool's response from Milos Kerkez, what a great goal that was. It's like Brighton were completely frozen over. Brighton had no answer for that goal. Kerkez just found that spot ahead of the Brighton goalkeeper, Bart Verbruggen, and he just got the ball in the net somehow. It's like no one ever saw him going in front of Verbruggen, and it's like he just got that goal out of nowhere. Liverpool made that pass, and there was no Brighton defender to stop that goal from ever happening. So it was a great goal that Liverpool responded back by. But after that, there wasn't much action from Liverpool. There wasn't much of a fight in Liverpool. It felt like Liverpool weren't even trying to do something in this matchup. And then Brighton scored those two great goals. Brighton were not as efficient, as silky as they used to be a few years ago. But against Liverpool, they did bring up a lot of the old Brighton back. They brought some of that confidence back. They brought some of that link-up back. They brought some of that togetherness and a competitiveness that they used to have against Liverpool back. And keeping Liverpool aside, because there has been so much talk about Liverpool, Onslaught has talked about Liverpool so much in the press conferences, has given a lot of explanations against low block teams and other. There has been a lot of talk about Liverpool in the media. But let's talk about Brighton, because no one's talking about Brighton. I think Brighton can still be a very good club. They can still be a very good club going into the top 10 in the next few seasons if they make the right moves, if they bring in the right players. They used to have some very talented, very efficient players who used to just get the job done for them, like Mitoma for a few seasons, like Levi Colwill, like Moses Caicedo, and all their other former attackers, Trossard, for example, before he joined Arsenal. Brighton used to be a very efficient team, and they need to bring some of those players back. They need to get their recruitment back online, and they need to get that running back in. And if Brighton make the right moves, if Brighton sign the right players, if Brighton continue their approach that they had a few years ago, we might be looking at Brighton going back to Europe. But that was all about Liverpool's trip to the south. Let's focus on Chelsea's trip to north, to Everton. Because boy, Liam Rosenier's Chelsea got smacked. And as a Chelsea fan, it just hurt to see, but it was not the most surprising thing ever. Because we expected us to lose. We expected Chelsea to lose. There doesn't seem to be much of a fight left in Chelsea, in this Chelsea squad at least. In Liam Rosenier's Chelsea, there doesn't seem to be much of a connection between the players and the managers, the fans and the managers, and the fans and the players either. It feels a very disconnected time in the club. I know the 22-23 season was a bit more grim for the fans, for us. We felt more disconnected than ever, but right now, things are headed in that direction again. There have to be some radical steps being taken by the club's officials, by the club's management, by the ownership, that do improve the connection between the fans and the club, the fans and the manager, the fans and the players. Because at the moment, it doesn't seem like anybody, even the club itself, believes in the project that we were promised 4 years ago, or even a couple of years ago when Maresca was still there. It's a grim time. It's a dark time at Chelsea right now. And it feels like no one is ready to take accountability for that fact. Players are blaming everyone. Players are indirectly throwing the blame on the ownership, the management. And they're not wrong in doing so. They're completely justified, but there has to be some level of self-reflection as well with the players, with the squad as well. I know the most of the fault, I know the majority of the blame goes to the ownership and the directors for not buying the right squad, for not assembling the right squad, for Maresca, who was already a very successful coach with this squad. But whatever team that he had and whatever the results that he was delivering, he was already pretty successful and pretty promising as a coach. We all thought Maresca would lead us into success in the coming years, but none of that ever happened. And Maresca eventually lost the trust of the sporting director. Maresca eventually lost the trust of the club, as Pochettino did, as Thomas Tuchel did, as Graham Potter did, as all of his predecessors did. He suffered the same fate, and he got sacked right on the very first day of the year. Let's talk about yesterday's game, because Chelsea were way too open in the play. Chelsea were way too exposed. Not only did they lack the mentality to compete in this game after losing so badly to PSG, after being battered by PSG over the two legs, it didn't feel like Chelsea had any level of self-belief, any level of belief in whatever is going on at the club with Liam Rosenior. It didn't feel like Chelsea had any fight in them. And all that got exposed. Chelsea were too exposed. We were always open in all those spaces that allowed Everton to score. We just didn't have anything in this game. We had no fight in us. Romeo Lavia was not good in the one-to-one spells. Romeo Lavia was not at his best yesterday. The same issue was persisting in our attack. Everyone was too intimidated to go into the final third, to take the players on from Everton. Only Estevao, when he came on towards the latter stages of the game, he only showed some fight at him. He also got the ball back from the Everton. He also got the ball back from the net after Ndiaye had scored the third goal. No one else was interested in putting up a fight in this game. No one else was interested in winning the game. I don't think any player is interested in continuing this season any further. I wouldn't be surprised if many of the top names leave the club. Pedro Neto would definitely leave the club this summer. Jamie Gittins could leave. Liam Delap could leave. Enzo, the club's vice captain, could leave, which would be a really sad and still a justified thing to see. There was a report yesterday or the day before that the squad was not suited to Liam Rosenior, so the club was still trusting Rosenior to go do well going further with this team. But then again, the question comes on, the squad was never adjusted for Maresca, the squad was never adjusted for Thomas Tuchel, it was never adjusted for Graham Potter, it was never adjusted for Mauricio Pochettino. The squad will never be adjusted for any coach. And when a coach does try to adjust the squad according to his wishes, according to his tactics, he gets fired. Pochettino got fired, Maresca got fired, Thomas Tuchel got fired in the same way, for the same reasons. Nothing regarding Chelsea makes sense, because if you wanted to create a team according to your wishes, you should have hired a coach that works according to that. But when you've hired another coach, then you're not making a team that works for him, and then you're saying the team doesn't work for him. Then you should make a team that does work for him, but you're not willing to do that either. So it's a situation that you can't wrap your head around. Again, as I said in my last video, you just can't wrap your head around any of this stuff that regarding Chelsea. None of it makes any sense. None of it makes any sense to any long-term football fan. It was so bad to concede that goal. That goal was just ridiculous to concede. These are the kind of goals that you wonder why the fans would even pay to make all the travel up to the north, to Everton, to Liverpool, to Merseyside. And Chelsea were also missing Reece James yesterday. Reece James has gotten another injury now, and Chelsea missed him sorely yesterday. But it's not just Reece James, because this trend has continued under Rosenior for too long. 4 games now Chelsea have lost in a row under Liam Rosenior. I don't get what the deal with Liam Rosenior is, because it doesn't seem like this job is good enough for him. It doesn't feel like he's suited for this job. The same problem that was with Graham Potter, the same problem that was with Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard is now doing great with Coventry City. Graham Potter has not done well ever since leaving Brighton. I don't get what the point of hiring coaches who haven't led clubs of the size of Chelsea, world champions, Champions League winners, Premier League winners multiple time. I don't get what the point of hiring coaches with no experience of leading a big club is. I don't get what the deal is, what the deal with the management is, what the deal with the directors is, because again, none of it makes sense when it comes to Chelsea. The appointment of the coaches, the signing of the players, none of it makes any sense. And if the club is trying to go by the approach of a club like Red Bull or Brighton or any other club, mid-table clubs that depend more on the recruitment and an efficient way of managing football, that just doesn't work at Chelsea. Chelsea is too big of a club for that. Chelsea fans are too impatient for that. We want quick results. We want trophies quickly. We want as much success in the short term as possible. We want as much guarantee of success in the long term as possible. And it is all possible. It is all possible. It is all very much possible. We've seen it in the cases of Liverpool, of Man City. It is all possible. You just have to go about it in the right way. And Chelsea management, they have just not gone about it in the right way. Because the flaws, the poor steps being taken, they're all too obvious. They're all too blatant now. And if this continues for another season or two, this project is done for. I think the project is already done for, but it would be too public by then, and the failure would be too public. And I don't get what the aim of the ownership with Chelsea is. Maybe they were looking to sell Chelsea eventually to another rich owner. How would you do that? The value of the club is going to drop by the way the trend, by the way the direction the club is headed in. Again, none of it makes any sense when it comes to Chelsea. And finally, I come to the Sunderland-Newcastle game. The Newcastle-Sunderland game. Newcastle, great team. Just had a bad window, the bad summer window last year, where they lost some of their key players. They lost Alexander Isak, one of the best attackers in Europe for the past few seasons, and it hasn't benefited any of the parties. They did bring in Visa, they did bring in Voltamada, and both of them showed some promise. But at the moment, none of them is delivering. Harvey Barnes, Lewis Hall, Livramento, all these players have been great for Newcastle. Tonali and Gimaresh, they're two big assets that have brought them to this level of success in the past few years. Now both of them want to get out of the club, according to recent reports, and there's sort of a race between the two to get out first of the club, because only one of them could stay at Newcastle the next season now. But again, Newcastle have played too many games this season. Their squad is just not suited to play so many games at such a high level. Their squad is just not suited to play so many games at such a high level for such a long period of time. A season of more than 60, 70 games. Newcastle is just not a club that is suited for all that. They did have success last season with winning the cup, but it doesn't seem like they would be replicating any of that this season. They're not going to qualify for Europe this season. It's a tough situation for Newcastle again. Sunderland, though, great promise at the start of the season. This season, coming back into the Premier League. Again, Newcastle are still struggle to beat Sunderland. Sunderland are still their bogey team, who also happen to be their historic rivals. Sunderland are a great team. Reggie Labrie is a good coach, and he's done a great job with Sunderland. ever since he's been there. But the thing with Sunderland is they've been so inconsistent of this season. They had a bright start to the season, but then they fell off a little bit. Now it seems like they're doing somewhat good. Again, great start from Newcastle. Great first half. They were leading the game. They were keeping Sunderland at bay. They were maintaining the tempo of the game. They were maintaining control of the game. They had the game in control after the beating by Barcelona that they received. Very commendable. They looked somewhat formidable as well. But again, it all took a few attempts, a few direct attempts from Sunderland. It only took a bit of persistence from Sunderland to just break that Newcastle wall and just get that goal in. And once that first goal for Sunderland went in, Newcastle lost the plot. Newcastle lost control of the game. Newcastle lost the tempo that they had at the start of the game. Lewis Hall, the shining figure for Newcastle again. Lewis Hall, we all loved him at Chelsea. We all knew he was going to have a bright future, and he's had a great time at Newcastle so far. But Newcastle should be treating him as one of the pillars of their team, one of the players that would carry their team in the future, one of their better future prospects going forward into the next few seasons. A great game again from Lewis Hall. Also took a good free kick towards the end. But again, Newcastle have played so much, and they've played so much against big teams. They've not had enough rest. There's such an air of uncertainty around the club. There's such an air of wariness around the club. It feels like Newcastle could do well in a season. Newcastle could do well in a season without Europe, and then assemble a squad strong enough with a strong enough core that could allow them to not only qualify for Europe for the 27-28 season, but also give the top European sides somewhat of a challenge, because against Barcelona, Newcastle were just blown away at Camp Nou, and it was always going to happen. But the way Newcastle have played over the season, it was bound to happen. And the last goal that Newcastle conceded in the 90th minute from Brian Broby, it felt like Newcastle players were just asleep, and Sunderland just had to get into those positions. Brian Broby was always going to score from there. Brian Broby is a great striker, and he always converts those chances. You just have to get the ball to him, and he just did his job. And it wasn't surprising to see that Newcastle lost out in this game. Again, Newcastle, Sunderland, both are great clubs, and both will do great things in the future, but both need to sort out their squad. Both need to sort out their approach to the league, their approach to what their actual aims are, qualifying for Europe and then staying there over the next few seasons. Both the clubs need some sorting out again, and it is always a joy to see the Tyneside derby. The game always delivers. What can I say? I have nothing to complain about. Anyways, that was it for the video. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts over the three games of the Premier League in the comments below, and if you want to check out my newsletter, I'll link it in the description below, and I'll see you guys really soon. This is Arush signing off again.